Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to The Great Retention with Camber Parker, sponsored by the YoProKnow. I'm Camber, your young professional expert and founder of the YoProKnow, where we bring you the answers you need to know about how to hire and retain the best talent, starting with the young professionals you work with. There's a lot of young professional fish in the sea, as I like to say, but how do you catch them? And what do you do once you reel them in? That's where we come in. Today, I am so excited to have Angie Tinnell join us, president of Meridian Resources, joining us from North Carolina. While Angie and I only connected this year, we instantly hit it off thanks to the HR community and have been supporting each other ever since. Angie's 25-year career in HR consulting and executive coaching sets the tone for our content today with her years of experience and acknowledgement of the changes that have taken place that leads us to where we are today. She is a dedicated leader and one who focuses on quality, integrity, and care for the people she serves. I'm excited to dive into coaching in today's modern workplace with you today, Angie. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Canberra. I'm so happy to be here today. This is a great topic.
We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to start off by doing what I like to call a lightning round. So just answer in a couple sentences or less. So first, tell us about something that is not on your resume.
Oh, I love that. One of my is not on my resume. I love to hike. It's a passion of mine. I've been hiking for well over 30 years with my old college roommate, and we do a lot of hiking. And she convinced me to sign up and participate in a hike called an extreme hike for cystic fibrosis, and I raised $3,000 for the organization.
Wow.
And I hiked over 30 miles in a single day on the Appalachian Trail over 3 mountain peaks. And Canberra, I will tell you, I thought I was going to die in the last 10 miles of that trek, and I could have exited. I give up, and I persevered, and I made it to the end. And even driving home from that event, I thought, you know what? I can do anything I set my mind to. So it's always been a great achievement. Yeah.
Congratulations.
And I still hike, believe it or not.
I think I might have felt like dying at the end of that too, but congratulations. Next, tell us about a memorable experience you've had working with a young professional or young professionals in the past. What did those experiences look like?
Yeah, recently I had an amazing experience working with several millennials. I'm a part of a professional on the board together, and we had to pull together a summer event that was attended by over 200 people. And we teamed together, and they brought all the tech tools that they're so familiar with. They brought their energy, enthusiasm, optimism. They were so responsive and dedicated, and it was a lot of fun working with them on that. And I was so impressed by what they did and how they moved in the workplace. And I have always encountered the younger generation being that way. Mm-hmm. So I think they're wonderful to work with.
Great. Nothing new, it sounds like. Tell us, in our last question of the lightning round, tell us what your favorite modern workplace tool is.
Hands down, OpenAI. I am a technology geek, and I was one of the first people to get on the ChatGPT when it opened up, and I was and I've learned how to prompt it to help me in so many aspects of my business, helping write content, massaging content, just getting starting points for creative ideas. And it's just been wonderful. I look forward to seeing how AI is going to continue to be integrated into our.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So in the meantime, let's jump into the meat of our discussion today, which is we are, of course, talking about the young professional generation, so Gen Z and millennials, that will make up more than that will make up about 2/3 of the workforce by 2030. So help us set the stage by talking about this from a recruiting and coaching lens. What type of impact will this shift in the workforce have on businesses, our economy, and our communities?
Great, a great starting point. And, what I'd love to start with is what does the workplace look like and how has it shifted specifically in light of these generations? I'm aware that many organizations are struggling with recruitment, and I attribute this to the fact that attitudes towards work in the workplace in general have changed significantly post-pandemic, and quite frankly, many companies have not caught up with the needs and the demands that are being presented. Just look at the headlines: the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, people are ghosting interviews, and even people who get offers are not showing up for their first day of work, and they don't really seem to care that they didn't. And when they get into it, they're not always going to stay if their needs aren't being met. And so again, it's an attitude shift, and young professionals in particular have brought this on. I think they don't work to live. It's no longer a priority. Work-life integration is so important. So work has to be meaningful and have purpose. And I love the values that the younger professional is bringing into the world of work. And, they're bringing these demands, but they want to feel supported, heard, and supported in these. Now, historically, companies have demanded loyalty and engagement. That a significant shift has happened, and now employees are bringing these new expectations and demands into the workplace, and they want to be heard and supported. And companies who don't respond are going to continue to struggle with recruiting and retaining young professionals.
Yeah.
And in regard to impact, there are so many positive things that the young professionals are bringing into the workplace. Expertise in technology is making companies more efficient and productive. They're so entrepreneurial and creative in spirit, and they're going to bring in new ideas and concepts. We're going to see broader diversity in the workplace on many different levels, and we're going to continue to see what I've noticed with companies is this trend towards being more socially responsible and accountable, and how do these companies move in the world of work. And the surge of young professionals in the workplace, I believe, is bringing transformative change to the economy, businesses, and these communities. And I think that if we can embrace their ideas and their preferences and values, we're going to have a really dynamic and inclusive work environment in the years to come. And that really aligns with where the modern workplace is moving.
Yeah. Thank you for that answer. That was very well thought out and very hopeful, right? The people that are listening to this are business leaders, community leaders, and they're struggling to attract and retain talent. If you have this type of approach, you're already light years ahead of some of those leaders that don't necessarily have this positive view. So I like those words: dynamic, inclusive, transformational change. This is, that was really impactful. So thank you, Angie. Now, let's talk about what you do with Meridian, right? How would you advise an organization that is feeling some of these impacts of the surge of young professional talent if they have an aging workforce? How do you intersect there with your company?
Yeah, we're usually in an advisory capacity if it were to come to a topic like this. And the way I look at this is currently there are 5 generations in the workforce, and of course they bring different expectations and mindsets to the office. And if a company is experiencing this surge of young talent, as well as an aging workforce, there's a lot of change happening within that organization. So it's very important to proactively integrate the different generations in order to increase engagement, which has been at a historic low for a number of years now. So there's a number of ways to go about doing this. I'm just going to pop up 2 high-level ideas.
Please.
First of all, educating employees about generational differences without generalizing or stereotyping, which can sometimes be challenging. But as we know, generations communicate differently. They have different work styles. They show up differently. So if we can really have an understanding of those differences, we can appreciate what that other person might bring to the table. And secondly, in regard to engagement, it's really important for companies to foster a culture of support. And specifically, when we're looking at the younger professionals versus those older professionals, a good way to do that is build in mentorship programs, and a lot of companies do that. And then thoughtfully create generationally diverse teams is an important way to do that as well. And both of these strategies can be key components of a good overall engagement for companies.
I love that. I mean, you already know this, but that is really the true message behind the YoProKnow, right? Is not just coming at it from one angle, like, you have to do this, this, and this to make young professionals happy. It's how can we all understand each other better and understand that, to your point, communication is different with different generations. It doesn't have to be, but you do have to understand some of those key communication differences. And I love the suggestion of having generationally diverse teams. That's really, really important. I have that on my own team. I know you have that on your team. It's important. So I'm so glad you touched on that. Anything else you want to add there before I jump to the next question?
Yes, I had it and I lost it.
We'll come back to it. Well, you just interject, okay, if you want to come back to it.
Okay.
For most of the listeners on this show, they are business owners or leaders looking for proactive ways to increase retention and find the best talent. How do they do that in a post-pandemic workplace? You've talked a lot about what happens once they're in there. There has to be this kind of sense of mindset shift. But are there maybe some low-hanging fruit tasks and kind of action steps that they can take immediately to retain good talent and develop good talent? You touched on mentorship, but anything else there that you want to touch on?
Yeah, what we've seen is the younger generation is so much more vocal, both verbally and with their feet, because they're literally walking out the door when their needs and expectations are not being met. And my observation has been that a number of companies still have blind spots, or they're just still hoping it's going to go away. They're still trying to get back to the way that it used to be. And, I'll give an example. I remember when millennials started to enter the workforce and move into, leaders trying to move into leadership roles. And, the first corporate response was, well, they just want to have more play in the workplace and more fun. And so let's get some vending machines and pool tables into the break rooms. And, since that time, corporations have appropriately adjusted their strategy to include those more broader and sustainable changes, such as focusing on corporate responsibility. Career progression is huge, and I know we'll be talking about that a lot. Getting and giving more feedback, really listening to their employees. Wellness programs, mental health is such a big issue right now. So having these wellness programs, better benefit packages, and all of these are going to probably apply to Gen Z as well. But it'll be really interesting to see what their voice becomes as they become broader in the workplace. But, it really took some time for companies to migrate from the pool table strategy to one that's much broader and meaningful. But the problem is, Camber, the world is changing so fast. And social media and the internet contribute to real-time information that young professionals are using to make decisions about their careers and the companies that they want to work for. So alongside recruitment and internal professional development strategies, which are really important, companies have to be mindful of the messaging that they're putting out into the internet, and also what their employees are saying about them online. And I will say YoProKnow has done an incredible job of doing these deep investigations and interviews into what young professionals are really looking for and what they need. And your recent report, State of Young Professionals Today, is so insightful. I enjoyed reading that. And it would give any organization such a leap ahead of just having some understanding about these generations.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And it was designed to be a tool for companies to do just that. So all of what you just said is so relevant to what more than just what we're talking about today. This is, if companies are still adapting to the foosball and the vending machine strategy, what's going to happen in 20 years when Gen Alpha starts to make their way, right? That's the generation after Gen Z, and 20 years is generous. They're coming just around the corner. And so companies really need to figure out how to adjust to this quick technology that is going to change the workforce forever. And to your point earlier, this is really happening as a result of the post-pandemic workplace. So jumping ship a little bit, because there's so much that we have to get into this very short time together. Walk us through your coaching with emerging leaders in today's workforce. So you've talked a lot about what you would recommend to companies who are trying to retain talent, but when you're coaching with emerging leaders themselves, what are you doing? And then how are you supporting companies to engage these future leaders? Because that's what they are, right? That's why we're talking today. It's all about how we can develop future leaders. And how can you spot the high potential in these young leaders? So a lot of questions to unpack there. I know it's a lot to unpack, but what do you want to start with?
Well, professional development is one of the top things that these young leaders are demanding. Tell me, it's a priority. Tell me how I can grow within your company. And the problem is that a lot of companies, aside from online training or go watch some videos, they don't bring coaching and development below the executive level in most cases. And our company has always believed that, coaching should be enterprise-wide. And some interesting statistics, 83% of companies believe that it's important to develop leaders at work. I'm surprised that number's not higher myself, but only 5% of companies have integrated leadership development programs. And the more astounding number is that only 11% of HR professionals really feel strongly that they've got a bench of people to start moving into succession plans. And those kind of statistics should be really alarming to organizations. Yeah. And again, when I talked about the companies having a blind side or just acting like it's not there, it'll go away, I think this could become very problematic. It is problematic.
It is.
So it's really important that companies develop a structured succession planning strategy. So first, how do we identify those emerging leaders? In our business, we do a lot of coaching. And very often what we find is that people are moved into leadership positions because they're very good technically at what they do. But unfortunately, they get thrown into those positions without any help or direction or support. And not everybody, just because they're good at their job, is good at managing people, because that's a whole different experience. And not only managing people different, but the way that individual needs to look at their job has to shift, because you're not doing anymore, you're leading people who are doing it. Yeah. And sometimes that transition is really hard for people. So other things to look for in regard to your emerging leader would be more subtle characteristics. Are they inspirational? Are they optimistic? That's a really important factor. Are they influential? Are they change agents? Are they emotionally intelligent? And I'll tell you, that's a big one right there, is looking for emotional intelligence. Really finding those people who have the growth mindset and are invested in the organization. That's a really important starting point. Second is to have a conversation with those potential emerging leaders and ask them, is that what they really want? And explaining to them what leadership would look like and how it would translate their job or transform their job. Because it would be a very different type of role. And so then you go to task of the development piece. And we have, in response to this need that has come post-pandemic, we actually created an emerging leader program, because so many companies are scrambling and instrument piece that while this part is so important, they lack the structure and the time to being able to do it. So we have a comprehensive emerging leader development program that helps these companies identify their future leaders and helps those leaders understand how to navigate their career paths. Coaching, we identify the gaps, and then we help them, each person, develop an action plan to helping them get where they want to go.
I think that's fantastic. And the question that kind of the curveball question that comes from that answer, which was wonderful, is, what happens when they don't find that these people are influential or inspirational or looking to be those change agents? Because in reality, we need more leaders, right? Because there are a lot of people exiting the workforce who are in leadership positions. So, and this might segue into our next question about AI, because we want to talk about AI, and obviously that's going to have a shift in the workplace as we know it. But what about those people that are not emerging leaders? How do we continue to engage them and maybe get them to a point where they can be emerging leaders?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I believe that in those circumstances, if they're not ready or the company doesn't feel like they're ready to be leaders, this is when feedback is so important to a company. So going out and actively speaking to your employees on a regular basis. And I think the companies that are doing this the best are making this real time and doing it a lot. They're not just, okay, once a year we're going to do an employee survey. They're doing it a lot more frequently, and there are structures in place that help facilitate that to being done. So you're constantly having a pulse on all of your employees and seeing where they're moving and progressing. And, another coaching product that we have available is, when you get a performance review in a company, regardless of your role, you could just be an individual contributor. I just got here or been here for a year. And so you get a performance evaluation and they're like, okay, Camber, you need to work on these 3 things. So bye-bye. We're done here. Good luck. We'll see you in another 6 months to a year. What we have is a program that helps do just-in-time coaching to help that individual actually work on those skills so that they have support to being able to have someone help them work through those things. So let's say that you need to be better at meetings. You don't speak up at meetings and we don't know what your ideas are, but we know you have them. So just-in-time coaching might look like, well, I'm your coach. You have a meeting coming up. Let's talk about strategy. Let's talk about ideas you want to bring to the table. And then you're going to go do your meeting. And then you're going to come back and we're going to debrief and talk about how it went, what you could have done differently. So again, it's just a way to breathe life and purpose into the performance appraisal that I don't think a lot of companies do a good job with that.
Yeah, thank you. I hope that people are enticed to reach out to you after this because it's worth a longer conversation, I think. But it's great to know that you have tools for people that if they don't have those emerging leaders, how can they get there? And I think the feedback answer is perfect. So now let's talk about the topic of the hour, right, for everybody these days in corporate and not corporate America. What impact do you think AI is going to have, but not just as a whole? What kind of impact is it going to have on young professionals in the workplace? Because these are primarily our entry-level folks, right? What kind of impact will it have on their future?
I'm so glad you asked this question. It bubbled up for me after this explosion of AI into the daily work that we're doing. And I was thinking about the fact that, how quickly businesses have responded or reacted to all of these new AI tools. And it just seems to be possibly hitting every industry, every function, but mostly the entry-level jobs. And when I look at career progression, so, you get your college degree or you just move into the workforce, those entry-level jobs serve such an important purpose. Yeah, they're task-oriented, but it gives that employee the ability to wet on the company culture and how to navigate within the company and just how to work in general, how to be in the workplace. It gives them a purpose of being there. So what keeps me up at night, and should keep a lot of companies up at night, is, we're going to bring in these technology tools, AI, limit or reduce a lot of those entry-level opportunities, and that's going to leave a gap. So how do you move from moving into the workforce? You can't just jump into leadership. What is that going to look like? How are we going to give our young people opportunities?
That is so important, what you just said.
That's very interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. It is. Sorry, I think we had a little tech glitch there. Do you want to say that again, that last part?
It's going to be very interesting to watch what happens.
Absolutely. And we've got to get this message out, right? What you just said is so important. It's not negative. We just have to be prepared as a business community, as a society, that if these young professionals don't get that exposure early on because of AI, then what's going to happen when they're leaders and they have to understand how to manage AI? So it's really impactful what's happening right now. So thank you for sharing that. I'm glad we talked about that. In the last few minutes that we have remaining, let's talk about this. As a growing number of young professionals enter the workforce and Gen X, baby boomer generations begin to retire, where do you see the biggest challenge? We've covered a lot of challenges today. What is the biggest challenge in your mind?
This really piggybacks off what we just talked about, and I'll explain that. Young professionals are going to have a lot of challenges navigating their career path within an organization. And what we know, Camber, we know they're motivated and they're ready to do so, but it's going to be how to do it and move up quickly. And there are a number of factors contributing to this, and I've given this a lot of thought. So what I'd like to do is step back maybe 10 years and let's think about how you used to move within an organization, because there was this imaginary, or, it didn't have a name. So you would graduate from college, you would take the entry-level job, you would be usually physically on site where you worked back in those days. So you got to build meaningful relationships with people. You got to understand the culture. You may have had a mentor, or at least you had access to that could, if you were really wanting to do it, they could, put their arm around yours and show you the ropes. But let's look at what's happened over the last 5 years. Over the pandemic, we had a tsunami of retirements. Mm-hmm. All of this, while they were aging out anyway, but then the pandemic really pushed a lot of them out early. And we lost intellectual capital, and we lost those mentors that could really help young people understand how to grow within a company. So that middle level, the Great Resignation, all these, mainly it was managers that were leaving in droves and doing this circular, I'm moving from company to company to company. Mm-hmm. So what you have now are managers that are, hey, I just got here last month. I don't know any more than anybody else how to maybe grow within the company. And I am generalizing. I mean, I'm painting a bigger picture, but these things are happening in organizations. And then now let's put the layer of the fact that most companies are still hybrid or remote or some combination of that. We're doing a lot of Zoom. So we're not by the water cooler. We're not in the break room together. We're building those critical, necessary relationships in an organization to help you navigate and build your career. That's going to be the struggle. And I don't even know who I'm supposed to know. And so the pain is real, and it's going to be something that I think companies can do a good job at figuring out how to help give some structure to that. As I talked earlier, mentoring programs, putting in, emerging leader programs, helping people understand how to move and grow within your company is going to be really important. And not just for leaders, but there are a lot of people that want to do more of a career lattice. They want to build skill sets and not necessarily move up. So we just need to give some structure generation so that we can recruit them, retain them, and put them into a succession plan so companies can thrive as we move forward.
Thank you for ending on a positive note, right? The question was a little bit daunting, a little bit negative, asking, what are the big challenges? But you answered that beautifully and you wrapped things up perfectly, which is what's the solution, right? The people in the audience want to know what they can do to better understand, attract, and engage young talent. And so to wrap things up, I'll ask you in a moment if there's anything that you want to mention that we haven't touched on already, but just a few key things that I heard from you today. Create generationally diverse teams. That is a huge game changer if you prepare for that. Having a really strong message, right? Social media affects real-time information that's getting to these young professionals. Making sure you have that authentic brand and messaging out there is really important. Offering professional development opportunities, emerging leader programs, mentoring, all of that is going to be so important in an organization. And getting feedback, right? Getting a pulse. If you're a leader that's not getting a pulse on your people, you are going to be in a tough spot in the future. And those are just very high level things we've talked about a lot today, including AI, including what your company can do today to prepare for tomorrow. Is there anything else that we have not touched on today, Angie, that you would like us to cover?
No, you summarized that very well. And, there's a lot that companies have to bite into and figure out. So I think it's important to look at some of these higher level things you can do, things you can implement quickly and sustainable in your organization. And I think with just some structure around really looking at how are we going to help these young professionals grow within our organization, answering that question and putting some things into place would be really important. Even if you only do one thing, do something and talk and act like it's going to go away and we're going to get back to the way we used to, because we're not.
Right. I think that's a great way to wrap up today's episode. Angie, thank you so much for being on the show. We'll make sure to link your information so that our listeners and viewers can contact you after if they decide to do that.
Thank you so much for having me today. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you again for joining us on The Great Retention with Camber Parker. Before you go, remember this. Young professionals make up nearly half of the workforce today and are expected to jump at a rapid pace in this next decade. What will you do to help them become the great leaders we need for our future? Join us next time for more information on how to recruit and retain young professional talent. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, because this helps others know where to find episodes about this topic and more. Plus, before you go, don't forget to share with one of your coworkers. This, again, helps us get in front of more people and, of course, spread this message. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.